So this tutorial is teaching you some of the basics that you can do with Photoshop and text, because you can actually use Photoshop to do things other than edit images. So the first thing you're going to do is open up your bulldog and your football field, and you can drag this image and make it larger just like you can with a Microsoft Word document. You'll notice in the bottom right corner there are some little dotted triangles, and if you pull that you can actually make it so it's a larger document size. So it's just going to open it the same way. File open, or hotkeys are Command O to open, and then you're going to select your file and then just hit enter. Opening files are just similar to opening them in Microsoft Word, so it's very easy. So you'll notice that you have two tabs here, and you can go between the two icons at this point. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut out this white background and move the bulldog head to the football field. And there's a couple ways to do this, and this is just one of many ways that you can cut this dog head out and move it. So the first thing we're going to do is, since the background is white, it means that if we select the white background using one of our selection tools, which is in this top part of the palette, we can select it easily because it's a different color than the color that's right next to it, which is the gray. So we're going to go up to the fourth tool, and we're going to click and hold and make sure you have the magic wand. You'll notice by all the tools there's a little letter. That letter signifies the hotkey for it. So I use hotkeys. You need to learn hotkeys as well. They will save you a lot of time when you're designing things or editing. So W would be the hotkey for that. So I'm going to click once on the white background, and you notice it selected the light colors. And that's what the magic wand does. It selects light colors, especially if they're different from the color around it. So like here you can see it's selecting the maroon, excuse me. So we're going to click on the white because that's what we want to get rid of. So right now the marching ants are marching around what they have selected, which is the white. But we want to select the bulldog. If you go up top to your menus are just up at the top like they are in any other software. You're going to go to the select menu because you're changing something about the selection. So you really have to think about what you're doing, and that'll help you decide what menu to go to. So go to the select menu and hit inverse, and then it will actually select the inverse, which is the bulldog head. Now there's a couple ways that you can go about copying this over, but one of the easy ways is just copying it. So if you press Command C as in copy, and you'll see it blinked on the edit, which means that's where the copy is if you want to go up and do edit copy. Again, you need to learn your hotkeys because it will save you a lot of time. Then we're going to go ahead and close this because we don't need the bulldog. So we're going to click on this X, and we're going to go to our football, and we're going to press Command V as in Victor, and it will paste your bulldog. Now the bulldog is a little bit small in this frame, so what we're going to do is we're going to actually make him a little bit bigger. And the way to do that is Edit Free Transform. So you can go up to the Edit menu, Free Transform, or what I want you to do is press Command T as in Teresa, or Transform. Now if you look, you can actually stretch it if you wanted to and make it a different size. However, that is against the university policy. Whenever you start working with universities or specific logos and icons, they have rules and regulations on where you can use them, how you can use them, what colored backgrounds and things like that, and that you can't distort the size. So when you do Command T, you'll notice if you go to the up and down arrow is for the top, left and right is for the side, but we don't want to stretch it and make it look like it's in a circus mirror. So we're going to go to the corner, and you'll see it goes to a double-sided arrow. Then I want you to hold the Shift key down. Hold the Shift key. Now click with your mouse and pull it out, and that makes it larger, and it does it proportionately. Moving it inward makes it smaller. We want to make it a little bit larger, so that way we can have something to work around with our text. And then we're going to press the Return or Enter key to apply the transformation. Now in order to move this icon around, you have to go to your Move or Selection arrow, which is at the top of your selection palette up here. And again, that hotkey is V as in Victor, and then now I can actually move the item around and put it wherever I want it. So we're going to go over some text basics now that we've done a COB. A COB stands for Cut Out Background, and unfortunately a lot of the cut out backgrounds you're going to do are not going to be as simple as this bulldog head. But that is just one of the easy ways to cut out the background. To get to your text tool, you can press T as in text, and you'll notice it highlights the text tool. There are a couple of varieties of the text tool. If you click and hold, you notice you can do horizontal type, vertical type, horizontal and vertical type mask. The ones with the dots that say type mask mean that if you actually utilize this text over a picture, it will have the picture inside your text, which is kind of neat for some things. But we're going to start out and we're going to go with the vertical type tool. It's not something I tend to use very often because it spaces out the letters in slightly odd ways. When you select any tool in Photoshop, you'll notice that under the menus there's an area what I call the options bar. This allows you to change things about that. This changes what color the text is. So if I click on a colored box, I can click and say let's make it the maroon color just by clicking on the maroon and then say OK. I can change the size of the font and make it smaller. So I'll make it smaller and we'll see how well that works. Clicking on the font name will allow you to change the font. So find a font that you like. Mine have a lot more font options than yours because you can see I download a lot of fonts because I do graphic design. It is important to get a font library or font suitcase when you are a graphic designer because the fonts that come with the program are not enough. You can go to dafont.com, DAFONT.com, and download fonts. They have great selection. So once you select your font and you're in the vertical type and you have the burgundy color, let's click on the left side and we'll spell out Mississippi State. So and if you can't get it to fit with the size that you have, then you need to make it larger. So to make it larger, you have to use the text tool and you can click, 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 and it'll select all the text. And I can even change it by just highlighting this and doing odd sizes like 39. Then I need to use my move arrow, which is V to get the move arrow, and move the item up. And now I can see it. Now I don't know about you, but I think this font is a little bit too narrow for this area. I'm starting to lose it. So what I could do is change fonts. But if you really like the font, what you can do is transform it just like you did the bulldog head, but instead of doing it proportionately, you can do what I showed you at the beginning and distort it. So I'm going to press Command T. So I want you to widen your font, so press Command T, and then pull from the right and pull it over, and you'll notice you're making it a little bit larger. Make sure you don't go too large and you can't read it, that it's not legible. So make sure that when you widen the font that you can still read it, and then press Enter to apply the transformation. So I'm going to look for you to transform that and make it a little bit wider. And then use your move arrow and move it to where you like it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to apply some effects to this text. One way to apply the effects to the text is you can go up to the menu, but I like going over here to the right. You'll notice you have windows or palettes on the right side, and you should look for one called Layers. If you don't see it, you can always go up to Window, Layers, or press F7, and it should bring up your layers. If Layers is checked like mine is, it means that it is open, you just have to find it. Or you can unclick it and then click it again and it's easy to be found. So you'll notice that it has different layers for different elements that you have in Photoshop. Whenever you place an item into Photoshop, it creates its own layer, and every time you use text, it will create its own layer, which is great because you can move them around independently. Layers are like sheets on a bed. Like if you have a big sheet or a comforter, but you have pillows on top, you'll see the pillows, the small item like the text, but you'll still see the sheet or the comforter, which is our background. If you change the order of where items are, like if I were to move the bulldog head under the background, which I had to copy so I could do that because it's locked, which is what that lock is. If I move it behind that background, now you're not going to see it, but if I move it above it, you can see it. The reason the background layer is locked is because it is the background, so the only way to unlock it is to copy it and have another layer, but you can just leave it the way it is. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go to the Mississippi State text layer and we're going to double click in the empty blue area. Click, click. And it brings up your layer styles. You can also go to that by clicking the FX down here. So I'll show you how you can do that. You can double click, or you can move it down here and go to the effects and pick the effects you want to use. I don't always know which effects I want to use, so I always double click, and that way I have the options of doing all of them at one time. To move the box, it's just like, again, any other software or window on a Mac. You click in the light gray area of the box and you can move it around while clicking and holding with your mouse. If you click on any of these boxes, you'll notice you can add drop shadows, inner shadows, glows, inner glows, bevel emboss. But the one thing you want to do is you don't want to utilize too many of these because then it becomes difficult to read. So what we're going to do is we're going to add just a stroke or a gradient. I think we're going to go with not a gradient but a glow. So if you go to glow, outer glow, click on outer glow, and yeah, you might like it, but you might want to change it. Now the way you can change it for any of these is what I'm going to show you right now. When you click on the box and apply the effect, if you click on the word, it'll highlight it in blue, and then you'll notice the options in the middle will change. You can change the color of the blend, or excuse me, of the outer glow. I can make it a gray. I can make it a purple. But you have to remember that there are psychological values attached to each color and color combination. So you really also have to think about your target audience and your client. Putting purple with maroon is probably not a good idea. So I'm actually going to leave it with the white because I like it. I think it ties it back to the image and it glows. So I'm going to press OK. If you want to change the color you see in this box, you'll notice there's a slider bar with two triangles. If you move these triangles up and down, you can see that it changes where you are on this color bar, and you can click on the color. If you want to change the opacity, is it see-through, is it 100%? You'll see if I go to 100%, it's going to be white, but the reason it's lighter is because of the blend mode. It's dodging it and it's not 100%, so I'm going to go back down to about 70. Oops, I pressed return and that's why it applied it, so I'm just going to double click it to go back. And I'm going to click on the outer glow to go back to where I was. What I can do is I can change the spread. The spread is how wide it is and how far it goes, but then it starts looking like an outline. So I'm going to press Command Z to undo it and bring it back. And bring it back a little bit lower. It's a little crazy. You can also put the number there, so if you want to put 8 or you want to put 5, you can, and it'll change it. The size is how big it is. How big does that glow go? Which you can do to kind of, again, like we said, sometimes to soften it, the background, so it pops from the background more. You can adjust the size. So I want you to adjust the size to what you think looks good, so I can kind of determine what you feel looks good with your outer glow. You don't want it too small. Depends, it doesn't make it pop that much. So I'm going to make mine a little bigger. You don't have to use the one I did. I'm just going with what I'm going to do right now in this tutorial. And then I'm going to change it. These other options are things that you can play around with, but we're not going to go over them. You could spend a whole class just on Photoshop, and we wouldn't even scratch the surface of all the things that this program can do. So I'm going to press OK. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do some text, and we're going to make it horizontal. So we're going to go back to our text tool, T for text, click and hold, and then go to the horizontal type tool. And again, remember, you can see you have your option bars up here. It's not good to use too many fonts in a design, but I want you to change fonts so that way I can see that you know how to change them. So remember, make sure it's something you can read. I'm not going to go to Wingdings or anything like that because that's a little crazy. If you press the letter A, it'll take you to the letter A fonts. B will take me to the first B fonts, or there's a Baghdad font that I have. I can press C and it will take me up into the C's. So I'm just going to find a font and we're going to utilize it. I'll go to Aubrey. We tend to use that for Take 30. Whoops. And the reason it changed it, so I press Command Z to go back, is because that's the only text we have selected and we're on that layer. So if I click off of that layer and change it, it should be fine. So now that we're not on the text layer, it's not going to change that text font. So now I want you to click away from that, because you notice if you move over here, it's going to a vertical text because it's assuming you want to highlight this text. So move your cursor away from that and click, and then I want you to type Bulldogs. And I put it in all caps just by hitting the caps lock key. Again, V for the move arrow, click on the arrow, and then we're going to transform it. So if you like the font but you don't like the size of it, yes, you can go up and adjust the font size with the text tool, but I think the transform option is better because then I can make it custom, I can make it bigger, I can make it wider, I can stretch it, and adjust it to how I see fit. So let's go ahead and make it fairly large. And what we're going to do is we're going to change a few things about this, because you do have different options. Yes, you can leave your font normally, but however, what we're going to do is do what we call a warp to adjust the way it looks. So you'll notice if you have the text tool selected in your options bar with this font layer selected, you have a T with an arc. And what that is if you move your arrow there, it will let you see a little help window that tells you what it means. That says create warped text. So we're going to click on it, and then you'll notice it says style none. But if you click on it, you can see you can make it arc. You can make it look like a fish. So maybe if I was doing something religious, I could do a fish. Doesn't make sense here. You can do a shell where it changes it. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to use the arc. And if I use the arrow or have the selected, I can move it down closer to bully. And then you can actually adjust the bend of it. So it was at 50. So this can show you how you can bend it more. So I'm going to go to, we'll go to 60. So let's go to, depending on what font you use, it's going to change it. So you want to make it where it kind of arcs over bully. Horizontal distortion adjusts it how it looks horizontally. Makes it look like it's further away or coming closer to you. But I'm going to leave it into the center. Vertical distortion adjusts it, is it going upwards or is it going downwards? You want to make sure again that you can read it. That you can't read. So I'm going to leave mine at 0. Again, you can play around with this. Make sure that whatever you do is legible. I just want to make sure that it arches over the whole bulldog. So once you adjust the arch, you can press OK, and now you have a text warp. So that's how you can do some of the basics in Photoshop with text, but there's a lot of other things you can do, like reflected text, 3D text, text with texture, and things like that. But that is just the basics of Photoshop. So what I want you to do now is save this. So go to File, Save As, and it's going to come up as a .psd format, and you can see that up here as well as down here in Format, Photoshop. And what we're going to call it is your first initial, last name, text basics. P text basics. Let's do that so I know it's Photoshop. So P text basics. I can tell it's Photoshop because it's a PSD, but we're just going to put P in there anyway. So your first initial, last name, P text basics. You do want to save it as a Photoshop layer because that allows me, or Photoshop format, because it allows me to see all the layers. And then press save and press OK. And now you've done your first tutorial with text in Photoshop.